Hello dears, welcome back. Do you remember the narrator of our story, a shipwrecked sailor who was shipwrecked in the middle of the Caribbean Sea? Yes, Luis Alejandro Velasco. And what did we learn from the last class? Did you read the completed areas? Okay. Let's have a recap of the story as shipwrecked sailor up to we learned. Okay. Velasco and his shipmates were washed overboard during a storm in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. The ship plunged into an abyss and disappeared. Velasco recognized the voice of Julio Amador Caraballo, one of his shipmates. Velasco saw two life rafts about 7 meters apart. Velasco get into a life raft. Velasco saw three of his shipmates. They were Castillo, Caraballo and Luis Rengifo. These were the things that we discussed in the last class. And are you ready to go through the rest part of the story? But before that, I would like to remind you something. Please take a pencil and you should underline the unfamiliar words in your textbook and you should find the meaning of it. Okay, let's go through the rest part of the story. I quickly grabbed the oars and tried to get closer to the men. Caraballo, with the Castillo clinging to his neck, neared the raft. Much farther away, looking small and desolate, was the fourth of my mates, Herrera, who was waving at me while he held on to a crate. If I had to decide, I wouldn't have known which of my mates to go after first. But when I saw Herrera, the happy young man from Arjona, who had been with me only a few moments before, I began to paddle furiously. But the life raft was almost 2 meters long. It was very heavy in that lurching sea and I had to row against the wind. I don't think I managed to advance more than a meter. Desperate, I looked around once more and saw that Herrera had disappeared. Only Rengifo was swimming confidently towards the raft. I was sure he would make it. I had heard him snoring below my bunk and I was convinced that his serenity was stronger than the sea. In contrast, Caraballo was struggling with a Castillo, so that Castillo wouldn't let go of his neck. They were less than 3 meters away. I figured that if they got just a little closer, I could hold out an oar for them to grab. But at that moment, a gigantic wave lifted the raft, and from the top of the huge crest, I could see the mast of the small ship, heading away from me. When I came down again, Caraballo had vanished, with the Castillo hanging onto his neck. Alone, 2 meters away, Rengifo was still swimming calmly towards the raft. Did you listen to the story carefully? And now it's your turn to read the story, read the paragraphs that we just completed silently. Please read the part very silently. Okay dears, let's discuss the paragraph. From the last class, we learned that Velasco could see three of his shipmates. They were Castillo, Caraballo and Rengifo. Three of them were trying to reach the life raft where Velasco already reached. Castillo had a strong grip on around Caraballo's neck because Caraballo was a strong, well-built, tall person. Luis Rengifo was trying to stay above the water with his headphones aloft in his right hand. He had stripped off his shirt to swim very easily, but he had lost his life jacket. What was Velasco doing then? Yes, he grabbed the oars and he was trying to get closer to the men. That means Castillo, Caraballo and Luis Rengifo. Have you ever seen the oars? Here you can see the picture of oars. This is what we call oars. And the oars means a pole with a flat blade used to row or steer a boat through the water. That is called oars. Oar. Velasco could see the fourth shipmate. And what was the name of the fourth shipmate? Yes, Raymond Herrera. And my question, how was he look like to Velasco? At first, how was he look like? How was Raymond Herrera look like to Velasco? Yes, he was look like small and desolate, and he was waving to Velasco while he handed to a crate. So now Velasco could see four of his shipmates: Castillo, Caraballo, Luis Rengifo and Raymond Herrera. Velasco was in a confusion whom to save first. But when he saw Raymond Herrera, he decided to paddle towards Raymond Herrera. He decided to paddle towards Raymond Herrera. And there is a question for you. How was Herrera introduced by Velasco? How was Raymond Herrera introduced by Velasco? Yes. Velasco introduced Herrera, the happy young man from Arjona. The happy young man from Arjona. And fourth question. Could Velasco save Raymond Herrera? Why? Could Velasco save Raymond Herrera? Why? Yeah. Velasco couldn't save Herrera because the life raft was almost 2 meters away and it was very heavy in that lurching sea and he had to row against the wind. That means Velasco couldn't save Raymond Herrera. Desperately, Velasco saw Raymond Herrera vanished. He couldn't save him. Velasco saw that Luis Rengifo was swimming very confidently towards the life raft. Dears, what kind of a man was Luis Rengifo? What do you think? What kind of a man was Luis Rengifo? Yes, he was a bold and confident person who was not ready to give up till the end. Velasco saw Caraballo, who was struggling with Castillo, and they were less than 3 meters away from him. Velasco calculated that if they got just a little closer, he could hold out an oar for them to grab. What happened at that moment? What happened at that moment? Yes, a gigantic wave lifted the raft. And my question, when the gigantic wave lifted the raft, Velasco could see something. What was that? When the gigantic wave lifted the raft, Velasco could see something. What was that? You are right. He could see the mast of a small ship heading away from him. What is a mast? Here you can see the picture of mast. A mast is a tall, upright post, spar or other structure on a ship or boat. My question. What happened to Caraballo and Castillo? What happened to Caraballo and Castillo? Yes. Caraballo vanished with Castillo hanging onto his neck. Caraballo and Castillo vanished in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. And my dears, the Rengifo was still swimming calmly towards the raft. And these were the things that we discussed today. Let's go through the paragraphs that we discussed again. You may please take your textbook and look at the paragraphs and please read with me. Let's start. I quickly grabbed the oars and tried to get closer to the men. Caraballo with Castillo clinging to his neck near the raft. Much farther away, looking small and desolate, was the fourth of my mates, Raymond Herrera, who was waving at me while he held on to a crate. If I had to decide, I wouldn't have known which of my mates to go after first. But when I saw Herrera, the happy young man from Arjona, who had been with me only a few moments before, I began to paddle furiously. But the life raft was almost 2 meters long. It was very heavy in that lurching sea and I had to row against the wind. I don't think I managed to advance more than a meter. Desperate, I looked around once more and saw that Herrera had disappeared. Only Rengifo was swimming confidently towards the raft. I was sure that he would make it. I had heard him snoring below my bunk and I was convinced that his serenity was stronger than the sea. In contrast, Caraballo was struggling with Castillo, so that Castillo wouldn't let go of his neck. They were less than 3 meters away. I figured that if they got just a little closer, I could hold out an oar for them to grab. But at that moment, a gigantic wave lifted the raft and from the top of the huge crest, I could see the mast of the small ship heading away from me. When I came down again, Caraballo had vanished, with the Castillo hanging onto his neck. Alone, 2 meters away, Rengifo was still swimming calmly towards the raft. I hope all of you have got a clear idea about the paragraph that has been taken today. And you may please read the paragraphs again and you may please answer the textual questions. So dears, this is all for today. Thank you so much. Goodbye.